Hi, I'm Stefan of StefanGourmet.com. My passion is food and cooking. I like to discover new recipes and new techniques and share them with the world on my blog. I've started blogging 10 years ago, around the same time when I discovered Sous Vide. This is why a large part of StefanGourmet.com is dedicated to sous vide, with hundreds of articles on sous vide, including recipes, comparisons between various time and temperature combinations for a myriad of ingredients, and technical background articles. For me, there is no right or wrong when it comes to cooking. It is not about following rules, it is about getting the results you want. Why insist on following a rule if you can't taste the difference anyway? Some methods are heavily debated. If I am unsure what method is best, or if it is worth additional effort, I will do experiments to find out if I can taste or measure the difference with a detailed report on my blog. I find it very convenient to have a freezer full of sous vide cooked meats that can be defrosted and reheated sous vide in an hour or less. By the way, from a food safety standpoint, it is fine to cook frozen meat without defrosting first, or to sous vide frozen meat and then freeze the cooked meat again. But that is not what this video is about. We know that freezing damages the meat cells and causes loss of juices. But I was wondering how big that effect is, and whether it makes a big difference if you freeze before or after cooking sous vide, and whether it is better to defrost first or put meat straight into the sous vide when it is still frozen. To find out, I performed over 20 experiments with chicken breast. I chose chicken breast because it is a uniform piece of meat without connective tissue that can mess with the results. I'm confident that my findings for chicken breast also apply to other types of meat. For each experiment, I used chicken breast halves and seasoned them with about 1% of salt by weight. Then I vacuum seal and weigh the chicken breast with precision scales. I cooked the chicken breast sous vide at 60 Celsius for 90 minutes total. Some I freeze before sous vide, some after. Some I defrost before sous vide, some go straight in. Afterwards, I take the chicken breast out of the bag and pat it dry with paper towels. The juices that have leaked out of the chicken because of the cooking and freezing thus remain in the bag or are absorbed by the paper towel. Then I use precision scales to weigh the chicken breast, and finally I calculate the amount of weight that was lost, because that indicates the amount of juices that was lost. The weight loss of cooking a chicken breast without any freezing turns out to be about 6%, so that is our benchmark. If you cook the chicken breast without salt, the weight loss doubles to about 12%. You might expect that the salt will draw out the juices, but the actual effect is the exact opposite. This is why I always put salt on meat before cooking sous vide. The conclusion of the more than 20 experiments that I did is that the differences were so small that you would not notice them at all, or only barely, in a side-by-side comparison. In all of the experiments, the weight loss was between 6 and 12%. I can barely taste the difference between 6 and 12% of water loss, and I only notice it in a side-by-side comparison. Both of them are juicy and good. A smaller difference of 2 or 3% is very difficult to taste in a blind tasting. So, it doesn't really matter if you freeze before or after sous vide, or if you defrost before sous vide or sous vide directly from frozen. Defrosting in cold water or sous viding directly from frozen is slightly better than defrosting in a refrigerator, so my advice is to sous vide directly from frozen, as that is quicker. Because the results are so similar, you can just do what is most practical for you. If you use sous vide to defrost and reheat meat that has been cooked sous vide before freezing, the loss of juices is reduced ever so slightly by using a lower temperature to reheat than used for cooking the meat. With some additional experiments I did, I confirmed my suspicion that the explanation for these findings is that the interaction of salt with the meat has a bigger influence on the loss of juices than freezing or defrosting. This depends on how much time the salt has to penetrate into the meat before the sous vide cooking begins. I'm not saying these were scientific experiments. For instance, the chicken breasts varied somewhat in size, and the time they spent in the freezer was not exactly the same. I repeated some of the experiments and sometimes got results that were a few percentage points apart because of such factors. But I'm confident to say that for home cooks, my experiments have clearly demonstrated that there is no need to make a big deal about whether you freeze before or after sous vide, or whether you defrost first or sous vide directly from frozen. This is because the differences are small and hard to taste, if you can taste them at all. If you found this interesting, come and visit my blog at stefangourmet.com. I have posted an article with a detailed account of all the experiments I did for this video. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you soon in the comment section of my blog.